He sat on the cold concrete, silent. No sign, no begging, just a small American flag tucked into the straps of his worn-out backpack. Most people passed by without looking. Some glanced and looked away. And then came him. The guy in expensive jacket, fresh haircut, phone in one hand, coffee in the other. He stopped, smirked, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This what serving your country gets you? A sidewalk and a sleeping bag." The old man didn't flinch, didn't even blink. But that wasn't enough for the loudmouth. He pulled out $1, waved in the air like a joke, and dropped it on the ground at the old Marine's feet. "There, thanks for your service, hero." Laughter. A few chuckles from passers-by. No one said anything. No one stepped up until a woman from the back of the crowd walked forward. Mid-40s. Strong stance. Fierce eyes. She looked the young man dead in the face and said, "That man saved my father's life." The street went quiet. Even traffic seemed to hush. What she said next changed everything. And what she pulled out of her coat made that cocky smile vanish in seconds. You won't believe what happened next. And by the end of this story, you'll see why some heroes don't wear capes. They wear scars. The morning air was sharp, the kind that crept through jackets and reminded you winter wasn't done yet. On the corner of 3rd and Main, just outside a bustling Starbucks, a man sat silently against a brick wall, legs crossed, back straight. His face was weathered like desert stone, his beard trim but graying, and his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a military-style cap. No words came from his mouth, no cries for help, just a cardboard sign resting against his knees. U.S. Marine, Gulf War veteran, anything helps. God bless. His name was Raymond Price, 67 years old, former sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. He'd served in Kuwait in 1991, survived the heat, the bombs, and the blood. But what wouldn't it take? Life did. PTSD clung to him like a second skin. He came home to a country that moved on without him. His wife couldn't take the nightmares, the silence, the 1,000-yard stare. She left 2 years after his return. His son, once proud to wear his dad's old dog tags, stopped calling entirely. The last address Raymond had was a shelter, but even that closed down months ago. He'd been sleeping on benches, under bridges, in alleyways ever since. But you wouldn't know it by looking. He wore his old field jacket neatly zipped, boots laced, face clean. He didn't reek of alcohol or shout at the sky like others in his situation. No, Raymond sat like a sentry, guarding an invisible post, watching the city pulse around him. And in his stillness, there was dignity. He refused to beg. If people gave, he nodded once in thanks. If they ignored him, he didn't flinch. He wasn't here for pity. He was here because he had nowhere else to go. At 7:45 a.m., the city came alive. Businessmen rushed with Bluetooth earpieces and lattes. Students shuffled with half-zip backpacks. Joggers weaved past with earbuds locked in. Most passed Raymond like he was just another fixture of the urban landscape, no different than a trash can or lamppost. But beneath that calm exterior, every morning was a battle. Nightmares often kept him awake, visions of smoke and sand and screams. When sleep came, it was shallow and filled with noise. Cold mornings numbed his fingers. He'd lost count of the nights he'd curled up trying to protect his ribs from the wind, his memories from the past. That morning, like so many before, he had managed to get a cup of coffee from a volunteer who came around once a week. It was lukewarm, but he held it like gold. The warmth reminded him of the barracks, of campfires in the desert, of camaraderie he no longer had. He took slow sips, savoring each drop, like each one grounded him in the present, away from the ghost behind his eyes. A little girl with red mittens tugged at her mother's sleeve as they walked by. "Mommy, is he a soldier?" she asked, pointing to Raymond. Her mother hushed her and pulled her along, quickening their pace. Raymond didn't react. He'd seen that look 1,000 times, the mix of discomfort and guilt. People didn't know what to say to men like him, veterans who'd lost everything but their pride. At 8:02, a man dropped a granola bar into Raymond's lap without a word. At 8:15, a young woman in scrubs left half a sandwich next to his pack. At 8:33, A group of high schoolers laughed and pointed at his boots. "Are those even still made?" one of them joked. Raymond didn't move. He'd learned long ago that silence was stronger than anger. Behind his composure, however, was exhaustion, not just physical, but the deep, soul-sinking kind. He hadn't spoken a full sentence to anyone in over 3 days. Not since an old Army vet stopped to share a cigarette and a war story. That man hadn't come back since. But Raymond stayed in that spot each morning, faithfully, like clockwork, like duty. He remembered a time when the uniform commanded respect, when a salute meant something. Now, he was just an old man with scars people couldn't see. And then at 8:47 a.m., everything changed. The sharp sound of expensive dress shoes on concrete echoed down the sidewalk. A tall young man in a sleek gray coat and slick-back hair walked straight toward Raymond, sipping from a $7 coffee. His sunglasses reflected the morning sun, and his smirk arrived before his voice did. He stopped right in front of Raymond, looked him up and down, then turned to the growing pedestrian crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said with theatrical bow, "behold the American dream. Serve your country. End up on the street. Inspiring, isn't it?" A few people glanced, unsure whether to laugh or cringe. The man wasn't done. He pulled a crumpled dollar from his wallet and held it high. "Let's all do our part," he said, then dropped it at Raymond's feet, like tossing scraps to a stray dog. "Thanks for your service, old-timer." Raymond looked up, not with anger, not with shame, but with a steady, measured gaze that could silence a room. But the young man didn't care. He was already turning away, grinning, adjusting his coat. He hadn't gone 5 steps before a firm voice stopped him cold. "You just mocked a man who bled for this country," it said. "And you did it in front of me." The crowd turned. So did the young man. A woman had stepped out from the line at Starbucks. Late 40s, short auburn hair, military-style boots, and a fire in her eyes that froze the smirk right off his face. She walked toward Raymond, knelt beside him, and said, "Sergeant Price?" He blinked, confused. "I've been looking for you," she said. "You saved my father's life in Al-Kafji, and now I'm here to repay that debt." The street was silent, and for the first time in years, Raymond Price let a tear roll down his cheek. The war wasn't over, but maybe for the first time, it didn't feel so lonely. That noon, the sun grew harsh, but Raymond remained seated at his usual corner of the street, hands wrapped around a lukewarm coffee cup, his gaze unfocused yet present. He was used to stares, most indifferent, some pitying, a few contemptuous. He no longer expected anything from the world, clinging only to his dignity like the last button on a worn coat, nothing left but pride still intact. The sharp sound of leather shoes striking pavement suddenly cut through the calm of midday like a blade. 3 young men, dressed as if ready to grace the cover of GQ, strolled across the street. Stylish ties, tailored suits, faces untouched by failure. They laughed loudly, eyes scanning the surroundings, until one of them, the most confident, hair slicked back with gel, broke away from a group and walked directly toward Raymond. "Hey guys, look at this," he said, voice thick with mockery. A real-life lesson for anyone still dreaming about honor and patriotism. The other 2 snickered behind him, but didn't intervene. The young man stepped closer, pretending to crouch as if offering Raymond something. Instead, he tossed a coin. It didn't fall gently, but clattered intentionally, rolling until it came to a stop at the dusty tip of the veteran's shoe. "Thank you for your service, sir," he sneered, dragging out the words like a cruel performance. Raymond didn't look up. He'd heard worse. But the silence that followed thickened the air. A few passers-by hesitated. A couple turned their heads. A mother pulled her child along a little faster. No one said a word. No one wanted to get involved. And the young man knew it. He stood upright, arms out like he was on stage. "See that?" he said louder. "War doesn't make you a hero. It just turns you into a ghost in broad daylight." No one responded. Not a word in defense. Not a whisper of protest. Until the Starbucks door swung open. Out of the shaded doorway stepped a woman. She wore jeans, a faded army green jacket, hair tied neatly back, eyes sharp as a blade. No one knew her, but her stride, deliberate, unwavering, made the young man freeze for a second. She walked straight up and stopped exactly 3 steps from Raymond, locking eyes with the man who had humiliated him. "Pick up that coin," she said, her voice low and steady. The young man raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Sorry, who exactly are you?" "I'm former Captain Laura Jennings, United States Army. I led a logistics unit in Fallujah in 2004. I lost 3 teammates there. And this man," she said, turning to Raymond, "helped save my father from a burning vehicle ambushed in Kuwait. He's a living legend. And you, kid, you're just a stain on his boots." The whole street froze in silence. The young man scoffed, but his eyes began to flicker. People started turning back. A few phones were raised, capturing the moment. The sense of control drained from him like a torn jacket in the wind. "Oh, so you were in the military too," he muttered, his voice losing steam. "Then you should understand. He chose his path. No one forced him to be a soldier. And you," Laura cut him off, "chose to be a coward. It's easy to laugh when you've never bled for a flag. But courage, real courage, is picking that coin up. It's saying, 'I was wrong.' Can you do that?" No more laughter. The 2 friends behind him stepped back. The young man looked around, suddenly aware of the cameras, of the faces. Moments ago, he was the center of a joke. Now he was a symbol of ignorance, exposed. He bent down, picked up the coin without a word, and walked away, briskly, almost running. The crowd silently parted. The woman remained, watching until he vanished into the noise of the city. Then she turned to Raymond. She knelt down and gently took his hand. "Raymond," she said, "I'm Colonel Jennings's daughter. My father told stories about you every year on his birthday. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't have lived to raise me. He taught me to stand up for what's right, because of men like you." Raymond's eyes welled up. He said nothing, but in his gaze lived a generation long forgotten, now remembered, even if just for this moment. Laura sat beside him, not out of pity, not as charity, but simply to sit next to a fellow soldier, a warrior who gave his youth to flag and now asked for nothing but dignity. The crowd began to disperse, but some stayed. Someone brought him a fresh coffee. Another offered a sandwich. A parent led their child up to shake Raymond's hand. Only a few minutes had passed, but a lifetime of being invisible was balanced, however briefly, by a wave of quiet honor. And as the late afternoon sun warmed the sidewalk, Raymond smiled for the first time in years. Not for the coin, not for the food, but because finally he was seen. She wore a faded military field shirt and carried an old, weathered notebook. Around 40 years old, her eyes were steady, resolute. She walked forward, unshaken, her voice cutting through the afternoon noise as she addressed a young man who had just mocked Raymond. "Do you even know who he is?" she said, her voice clear. "Raymond Price, Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. He saved my father's life at Al-Kafji. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here today." The entire street froze. Every head turned. The air grew still. The woman knelt beside Raymond and gently opened her notebook. Inside was an old photo of 2 young Marines, a letter of gratitude from the Pentagon, and a Purple Heart medal carefully pressed between the pages. She placed a hand on Raymond's shoulder. "I've been looking for you for 2 years, she said, her voice trembling. "I'm the daughter of Captain Samuel Cross, the man you dragged out of the fire back in 91. You're still alive, and you were never forgotten." Raymond stared at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. He didn't say a word, but his expression said everything: surprise, pain, hope, and something that had long been missing from his gaze: belonging. "My father told me stories about you my whole life," she continued. "About your bravery, your sacrifice. He said you didn't just save his life. You saved his future. You gave me a chance to be born." People in the crowd began to stir. Some lowered their heads. Others wiped at their eyes. The street, moment ago full of indifference, was now hushed with reverence. She pulled a photograph from her pocket. A worn, faded snapshot of 2 Marines laughing in the desert sun. She handed it to Raymond. "This is you and my dad. Taken right after you saved him. He's carried this picture in his wallet ever since. Now it's mine, and now it's yours again. Raymond took the photo with trembling hands, staring at it as if it were a memory come back to life. A single tear slipped down his cheek. "I want you to know," she said softly, "you were never invisible to us. My family has prayed for you, searched for you, honored you. Today, I came to say thank you. From the bottom of my heart." Raymond nodded, unable to speak, clutching the photo tightly. In that moment, he wasn't a forgotten veteran on the sidewalk. He was a hero, remembered, honored, loved. She stood and turned to crowd. "We cannot let people like Sergeant Price fade into the margins of our streets. He gave everything for us. It's time we gave something back." Silence, then one clap, then another, and another, until the entire street was filled with applause. People stepped forward. A man handed Raymond a fresh cup of coffee. A woman offered him a sandwich. Another dropped to her knees and whispered, "Thank you for your service." Raymond looked around, eyes misty. He smiled. Not wide, not boastful, just enough to say, "I'm still here. And now I'm seen." The woman turned back to him and took his hand. "You're not going to be alone anymore. I'm going to help you find a place to live, a job, a new start. You deserve that. You've earned that." Raymond squeezed her hand, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." In that moment, for the first time in years, he didn't feel forgotten. He felt found. The young man stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the ground, the weight of his earlier mockery now pressing heavily upon him. Around him, the street buzzed with newfound energy, a collective awakening stirred by the woman's heartfelt revelation. An elderly woman, her steps deliberate and eyes moist with emotion, approached Raymond. In her hands, she held a neatly wrapped sandwich. Without a word, she offered it to him, her gesture speaking volumes. Raymond accepted it with a nod, his voice caught in his throat. Moments later, a businessman stepped forward, placing a crisp $20 bill into Raymond's weathered hands. "Thank you for your service," he murmured, his voice thick with sincerity. The woman who had earlier defended Raymond was now on her phone, her tone urgent. "I need immediate assistance for a homeless veteran named Raymond Price," she said. "He's in need of shelter and support." Within 15 minutes, a van from a local veteran support organization arrived. 2 staff members stepped out, approaching Raymond with warm smiles. "Mr. Price, we're here to help," one said. "Let's get you to a place where you can rest and recover." As Raymond was gently guided into the van, the crowd that had gathered erupted into applause. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she watched the vehicle drive away. "No one should be forgotten," she whispered, "especially not those who have fought for our freedom." Underscore, 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 underscore. This moment serves as a poignant reminder of the power of compassion and the impact of standing up for what's right. Raymond's story, once one of solitude and hardship, transformed into a testament of community and gratitude. There are heroes who don't need to wear capes or shine with medals to be called heroes. They don't appear on billboards or in flashy stories. They are simply ordinary people, carrying invisible scars that war has left on their bodies and souls. People who once fought to protect the freedom and safety of this country, and now all they ask for is something very small, respect, and not to be forgotten. Raymond Price, a former U.S. Marine who served in the Gulf War, is one of them. He doesn't seek pity or demand charity. He just wants to be seen and honored with the dignity he deserves. But his life has been a long struggle with the shadows of PTSD, loneliness, and society's indifference. Wandering the streets, huddled by cold brick walls, Raymond keeps a straight posture as if he's guarding an invisible checkpoint in the heart of the bustling city. His coat neat, eyes quietly watching the hurried passers-by, and a worn cardboard sign reading, "U.S. Marine, Gulf War veteran, anything helps. God bless." Heroes like Raymond don't need grandiose stories. It's their everyday struggles, the challenges they face, that make us pause, reflect, and act. If you ever see a veteran wandering the streets, don't turn away. Don't treat them like part of the scenery. A simple hello, A nod, a warm meal, or just a kind gesture might be the only light in their day, a beacon of hope that helps them keep going. Raymond's story is living proof of that. How a small act from a woman in the crowd awakened the compassion of the neighborhood, turning indifference into action, silence into voice. When one person decides to stand up, care, and help, they don't just change one life. They inspire everyone around them, and you can be that person. Remember, every veteran has a story, a priceless legacy of courage, sacrifice, and love for their country. They don't ask you to do great things, just a little attention, a little sharing, a little respect. That alone can help them find light in their darkest days. If you find the story meaningful, please help us spread this message by sharing this video widely. Let everyone know, feel, and act for those who once fought for us. And don't forget to hit subscribe on the Old Soldier Story channel, where we tell authentic, inspiring stories about the forgotten veterans, the silent heroes you've never met. Every subscribe, every view, every share is a precious support that helps us keep this mission alive. Together, we will build a community that honors the past, understands the value of freedom, and shares compassion with those who help secure it. So take a minute to listen, a minute to reflect, and a minute to act. Because heroes don't need capes. They just need to be remembered and honored in the right place at the right time. Let's make this world better, starting with kindness to those who once fought for us.